Hello everyone, today we are going to start with Unit 1, the basic of web technology. Now first we are going to discuss about WWW, that is World Wide Web and the Internet. The Internet is a global network of network. The Internet is nothing but a massive networks of networks, or you can say a networking infrastructure. It connects millions of computers together globally, forming a network in which any computer can communicate with any other computer as long as both are connected to the internet. The World Wide Web is a collection of information which is accessed via informations. Whatever the information collected online, that can be accessed via internet. So the World Wide Web is a networks of online content that is formatted in HTML and that can be accessed via HTTP. World Wide Web is a global information medium in which the user can read and write via computer connected to the internet. Now we will see the history of the worldwide. The Tim Berners-Lee in the year 1980 was investigating how computer could store information with the random links. In 1989, while working with the European Particle Physics Laboratory, he proposed to the idea of global hypertext space, in which any network accessible information could be referred to by a single universal document identifier. He has proposed the idea that any network accessible information could be referred using a single universal document identifier. After that, in 1990, this idea expanded with the further program and it is known as the World Wide Web. The term Internet and the World Wide Web are often used without much distinction. However, these two are not same. The Internet is the global networks of network, while the World Wide Web is a collection of information which is accessed via Internet. Or in another way, you can say that the Internet is an infrastructure while the web is a service on the top of that infrastructure. So I hope you clear what is the difference between the World Wide Web and the Internet. Now you know that World Wide Web is a collection of information which will be accessed via Internet. It means that when we are talking about the communication or to access the information, then you have to use some protocol. So it is accessed via protocol called HTTP. So we will see what is a protocol and what is HTTP. A protocol is nothing but a standard procedure for defining and regulating a communication. When any two parties begin a communication with each other, then there is some rules and regulation or a standard procedure that both parties have to follow. So that is what the protocol is. For example, TCP, UDP, HTTP and many more. Here HTTP is the foundation of data communication for the World Wide Web. Hypertext Transfer Protocol is an application layer protocol for distributing collaborative hypermedia information. HTTP is a generic and a stateless protocol. All of the communication between the devices using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol takes place via HTTP messages. How HTTP messages is going, or what is HTTP message, what is the format of HTTP message, that we will discuss later on. Now the features of HTTP. First, it is a connectionless protocol. Second, it is media independent, and third, it is a stateless protocol. Now first we will see in this detail. It is a connectionless protocol. The HTTP client, that is browser, initiate an HTTP request, and after a request is made, the client disconnect from the server and wait for the response. The server process the request and re-establish the connection with the client to send the response back. So that's why it is called the connectionless protocol. Next, media independent. It means that any types of data can be sent via HTTP as long as both the client and server know how to handle the data content. It required for the client as well as the server to specify the content type using appropriate MIME type that we will see in detail later on. Third, it is a stateless protocol. Why it is called stateless protocol? As HTTP is a connectionless and it is a direct result of HTTP being a stateless. It means that the client and server are aware of each other only during a current request. After that, both forget about each other. Due to this reason, client not retain any informations between different requests across the web page. It will not store any kinds of informations that about their communication. So that's why it is called the stateless protocol. Now, before moving forward toward the detailed description of HTTP, you should aware about a particular terminology. First is IP address. An IP address, that is Internet Protocol address, is a numerical label which will be assigned to each device which is participating in the computer network that use the IP protocol for the communication. It means that any device which is communicative, which is going to be a part of your computer network through which you are going to communicate. So all that kind of a device will assign a numerical label to identify that particular device. So that is called the IP address. Second is port number. A port number is a 16-bit number which is going to be associated with your IP address to complete the destination address for the communication session. If you want to communicate with particular destination, and then you have to specify the IP address at the same time the port number to identify the particular destination. So port number is a 16-bit number which will be associated with your IP address. So this both together will form a socket. So socket is nothing but the combination of your IP address and the port number. Now we will see the hypertext transfer protocol in detail. Hypertext transfer protocol is implemented in a two program. First, a client program, and second, a server program. Both programs are executing on a different end system. In one end we are having the client program, and in second end we are having the server program. Both the systems are communicate with each other, or both the systems are talk to each other by exchanging the HTTP messages. They both are communicating with each other by sending the HTTP messages. The client first initiate the TCP connection with the server. First, client will initiate the TCP connection. First, the connection is established. Once the connection is established, the browser and server process the access TCP through their socket interface. Now, we will see how HTTP is work. Suppose client want to visit www.yahoo.com. So here you can see this is a client machine and this is your web server. Now you are going to type in address bar www.yahoo.com. This domain have a specific IP address, and that IP address is going to be a save in your DNS, that is domain name server. Now, as we are a human being, we don't know the IP address of each and every domain, right? So what we are going to write? We are going to write the domain name. So here we are going to write www.yahoo.com. So what first client will send, when it will write www.yahoo.com, then it will send the request that what is the IP address for yahoo.com, and that request is sent to your DNS server. DNS server will find the IP address of this particular requested URL, and then it will send back this IP address of requested URL to the client. So here now client is connect with this IP address and make a further communication. So after the client is connected with the particular web server, client will send the request for the particular resources from that particular server, and it will send to the web server. Web server will receive this request, it will process the request, and again back it will send the response to the client. So this is how the HTTP communication will work. Client will first write the requested resources in the address bar, and then that request is sent to the DNS. DNS will send the IP address for the particular web server. After that, client will make the request to that particular server. Once the connection is established to this with this particular server, it will send the request. That server will receive the request, it will process the request, and again send back the response to the particular client. So this is how your HTTP will work. Now there are two types of connection: non-persistent and persistent connections. What do you mean by non-persistent and what do you mean by persistent? In non-persistent connection, each request response pair are sent over a separate TCP connections. Means whenever client make any request, it will always create a separate TCP connection. That is called a non-persistent connection. And second one is persistent. Mean all of the requests and their corresponding response are sent over the same TCP. Using only single TCP connection, more than one request can be sent to the particular server. Every time, no need to create a separate TCP connection. So that is called the persistent connection. Now we will see HTTP request and response message format. As we have already discussed, that client and server will communicate with each other, they talk with each other with the HTTP messages. So what is the HTTP messages? Client will send the HTTP request message and server will send the HTTP response message to the client. So we will see what is HTTP request message format is and what is HTTP response message format is. First, HTTP request message. This diagram will show the general format of an HTTP request message. This request message will have a main four part: request line, header line, blank line, and the end. This first line of an HTTP request message is called the request line, and the subsequent line are called the header line. The request line has a three field: first method, second the URL, and third the HTTP version field. The method field can take a several different value like get, post, head, put, delete, that we will discuss afterwards. Generally, we are using the get method to request resources from the server. Header will contain the information about the pages, metadata, and many more kinds of informations in the header. In entity body, we are going to pass a message. Now, request methods. What are the types of request method? First is get. Get is used to retrieve the document identifier in the URL. When whatever you are going to type in URL, it means that you want that document from the server. So to get the information, to get a document that you have specified in the address bar, we are going to use a get method. Second is head method. HTTP head request is very much similar to your get request. It is easiest method to know that complete detail of the resources available on the particular URL without downloading the entire data. Retrieve the data information about document identifier in the URL. This will only retrieve the metadata about the URL that you have passed as a request. Third one is delete. Delete request will delete a specified resources on the specified URL. Right? It will delete the specified URL. It will delete the resources from the specified URL. Next is option. Option is the request information about the available option. After that is put. Put request is also very much similar to your post request. Post is used to give information to the server. Post is used to request to give the information to the server, while put is used to store the document under the specified URL. Or you can say put request send or create the resources in the specified URL. If the resources already present in that specified URL, then it will update that URL, otherwise it will create the resources. So that is what the put is. Put is create or update the URL. If it is present, then it will update. If it is not, then it will create the resources. Next is trace. Trace is used to troubleshoot the HTTP web page, to look back to your request messages. That is called a trace. And the connection is used by the proxies. So these all are the types of method you can specify while requesting the resources. But generally we are using get and post. Get is to retrieve the document and post is to store the information in the server. Now the next is HTTP response messages. Here HTTP response message, this is the format of your HTTP response message. It has a 3 section: initial section, header line and entity body. The entity body contains the requested object itself. Whatever you are requesting, that object is stored in your entity body. This is the message is going to be sent from the web server to the client. So client, whatever the request has been made by the client is going to be a sent back. Response of that particular request is sent back to the client. So whatever user has requested, that is going to be stored in entity body. The status line has a 3 field: the version of your HTTP protocol, a status code and the corresponding message for your code. There are various there are some common codes and their associate messages. So which are there? First, 200 OK. It means that request succeeded and the information is returned in the response. Request is successfully processed by the server and whatever the information requested are returned back in the response. So it is 200 OK. Next is 301. It means that moved permanently. Whatever the object you are requesting, that is permanently moved from the current directory you are looking for to some another directory. So the new URL is specified in the location header of your response message. Whatever the new URL where it is transferred or it is moved, and that URL is sent in the header of your response message. Client can retrieve that resources from the new URL. Next is 400 bad requests. This is the message you will get when the request could not be understood by the server. Whatever the request you are sending to the server and server is not able to understand your request, then this code 400 with the bad request will display. Next is 404 not found. The requested document if does not exist on a server. Whatever the document you are requesting from the client and that is not existing on the server, then you will find 404 not found error. 505 HTTP version not supported. The requested HTTP protocol version is, if it is not supported by the server, then you will find 505. Means server failed to fulfill your apparently valid request. So this all kind of a code, any one of this code can be written. If it is succeed, then 200, and if it is not, then any one out of these 4 based on the action it will give you the response. So today we have discussed what is World Wide Web, what is Internet in detail, what is the difference between these two terms. We have seen what is HTTP, what is basic architecture of HTTP, how it will work, HTTP message format, HTTP request message format, HTTP response message format in detail. Okay. In next session we are going to start with web browser architecture. Thank you.